Welcome to episode 20 of True Untold Nightmares. I'm your host, Chris Moss, and today I got 3 Dogman encounters for you, and I have received my very first Bigfoot encounter that I have attached on to the end of this episode as like a bonus encounter, which is why it got delayed till Monday, because really this episode was supposed to come out last week, but then I received the Bigfoot encounter and I was like, I got to attach it to episode 20. But besides the Bigfoot encounter, the 3 Dogman encounters I have for you today is one with somebody has an encounter with a Dogman with horns. The first time I received an encounter like that. The second encounter, somebody gets circled by a Dogman in the middle of the road. And the third encounter is somebody sees a Dogman eating on the side of the road. So got some good encounters for you today. But real quick, don't forget, join the Facebook group, link in the description. Follow me on Instagram. Send in your encounters to chrismoss1@outlook.com. The email is in the description. You can send me your encounter through Facebook group, or you can DM your encounter through Instagram. So Instagram, Facebook, or email, best way to reach me. Also, 1 year anniversary is coming up. July 4th, I believe, is the 1 year anniversary of the True Untold Nightmares podcast. So I got merch. Got some t-shirts and the hoodies for you. And I got, I'm working on some more designs. So it's not just the basic logo on a sweatshirt or logo on a shirt. I'm going to work on some other designs. And right now I got 2 designs, but I also have shot glasses with the True Untold Nightmare logo on it. And just go check it out. The Etsy shop, the link to the Etsy shop is down in the description of this video. And if you're listening to this on like Spotify or something, go to YouTube. YouTube, True Untold Nightmares, in the description, everything, all the links, contact info you need. But we're going to kick this episode off with the first encounter. Dogman on the road. Mark was driving back from being on vacation, and he had been driving for hours and it was dark, around 10 p.m. So he decided to take an old dirt back road as a shortcut. While on the road, he suddenly heard a loud howl echoing through the trees, and he quickly pulled his car to the side of the road and did the dumbest shit he's ever done in his life. His words. He stepped out his car and looked around because he's never heard something like it before or since. Just when he was about to step back in his car, he stopped and slowly turned his head towards the center of the road and found himself having a face-off with this dog wolf. It was huge, bigger than any wolf or dog that exists. Its head was big and wide. Its eyes were menacing. Its fur was a matted black mess. It was huge and muscular, but not like bodybuilder buff muscular, more like lean and muscular, if that makes sense. And it was on all 4s. Mark was frozen in fear as this thing stepped closer to him. He was sure he was going to be its next victim. And that's when this thing stopped and began to circle him, sniffing and growling. Mark was so scared he could barely breathe. And finally, this thing rose up on 2 legs and disappeared into the woods in one quick motion. And he said this thing moved fast. Like, fast is an understatement of how quick this thing can move. Mark said he quickly got back into his car and sped away, his heart pounding. He had never felt so relieved to see a place as he did when he finally reached home. From that day forward, Mark said he never ventured out on that road again. And he never wanted to see what he now knows is called a Dogman ever again. And his message to everybody listening is that anybody that wants to see this thing, think again, because you really don't. And he knows that's hard to believe, but trust him, because seeing this thing fucked him up. Let me know your theories and opinions down in the comments below. Remember, be nice, be respectful. And honestly, hearing all these different encounters, be careful out there. That's all I can tell people. Be careful out there when you decide to go hiking, when you decide to take shortcuts, when you decide to, get curious about that thing on the side of the road. Be careful and make sure you have some type of protection with you. I don't care if it's pepper spray and a taser, something. You have something that at least will deter whatever that thing is, even if it's for a 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes. That's a 1 or 2 minute head start you can have. And that could be a matter of life and death. But because remember, for people who saying that Dogman and Bigfoot don't attack people and they only intimidate you or they're not that bad, remember, we are only hearing from the people who have survived their encounters. Dead men tell no tales.
Dogman Roadkill.
Jonathan was making his way home late one night when out of the corner of his eye, he saw something strange on the side of the road. As he got closer, he thought it was an animal, like a bear, but it was huge, even for a bear, and it appeared to be eating something. He slowed his car until the animal was fully in his headlights, and what he saw sent a chill down his spine. It was a werewolf, and it was feasting on the remains of a deer. Now, the deer could have been roadkill, or maybe this damn thing killed it itself, but Jonathan was terrified. He wanted to speed away, but he was too afraid to take his eyes off the beast. He was paralyzed with fear as he watched the creature devour its meal. Then the werewolf stopped eating and slowly turned its head to look at him. Its eyes seemed self-illuminating, and John felt an icy chill run through him. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He sat there, unable to move, until the werewolf growled, stood up on two legs, and dragged the carcass into the dark tree line. Jonathan was shaken, and he drove the rest of the way home in silence. He never spoke of what he saw that night except for when he shared the encounter with me, and he never drove that stretch of road at night ever again. Now, I asked him about the eyes. He said the eyes were self-illuminating, so I asked him what color were the eyes, and he said the eyes were like amber, and he remembered that the snout was long, the head reminded him of a German shepherd's head, and this thing looked annoyed. Jonathan was glad of two things. One, that this thing was already eating. And the second thing he was glad about is that this thing wasn't so pissed that it would charge and attack his car. Because he said just looking at this thing, he felt like it could easily have ripped the doors right off his car. No problem. Or this thing could have busted in the windshield, snatched him out, and his car would have just been an empty car on the side of the road. Jonathan said that he drives a mini SUV, a Volkswagen mini SUV. And just by looking at this thing, he could tell if it wanted to get him, it would have. And this mini SUV would have been no protection at all. Jonathan said that he also doesn't talk about this encounter to anybody, not even his family, not even his closest friends, because who's going to believe him? Hey, I saw a werewolf late one night eating on the side of the road. Yeah, that's real believable. If anything, he feels like he would lose everything by telling people. And the last thing Jonathan told me before we ended our conversation was that life was better not knowing that this thing existed.
Werewolf with horns.
October 2020, around sunset, Daniel was on a hike through the woods, enjoying the sights, the sounds of nature, and he wasn't too far from the house. He's hiked these woods plenty of times before, so he basically knew his way around. But as he was making his way back home, he began to feel like he was being watched. Now, if you don't know, the Mississippi woods have all types of wildlife: red foxes, wild hogs, raccoons, deer, swamp rabbits, so on and so forth. Now, Daniel at this point stopped in his tracks and stood still so he could listen for any sign of danger. When all of a sudden, everything went quiet. And he meant everything. The only thing he could hear was the sound of his own breathing. And that's when he heard a loud howling coming from somewhere in the woods. Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest. At this point, it was dark now, so he slowly reached for his flashlight and slowly scanned around the area, and what he saw made him gasp in fear. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, but the eyes were so much taller than he was. Daniel's around 6'2", but what was attached to these eyes had to be about 8, maybe 9 feet tall. But the eyes weren't the worst thing about this creature. Standing in his light, and he emphasized standing on 2 legs, was a demonic werewolf, or at least it looked like a werewolf. But he believes what he saw was a demon, not a creature of the woods. It had the head of a wolf, and the head was huge, like bigger than any head he's ever seen. The hair or fur, he didn't know which one it was, but whatever it was dirty and dark colored. It could have been black or a dark brown, but he wasn't sure. It had a long snout, and the reason he believed this thing was a demon is because what was protruding out of its forehead was horns. He couldn't move. He had never been so scared in his life. He stood there trembling, not knowing what to do. The demon werewolf seemed to be sizing him up, and he was sure it was about to jump on him. But this thing smiled at him like it was enjoying how Daniel was reacting. After what felt like an eternity staring at each other, but was probably more like a few minutes, this thing walked backwards into the dark behind a tree. And that's when he slowly started hearing the crickets again. Daniel said he was terrified, but managed to make it back to his home safely. He never goes out into the woods alone anymore, not even during the day. This thing gave him nightmares for over a year. He said the horns on this thing, it reminded him of Hellboy, but the horns weren't as long as Hellboy's horns. They were shorter, but the position of them were the same. And he feels dumb for not bringing his gun with him, but he feels like if he would have brought a gun, it would have only pissed this thing off and provoked it to attack. And he shamefully admitted that he pissed himself, and he only found out that he had pissed himself after he got home. But, like I told him, there is no shame in admitting that you pissed yourself when you've had the type of encounter that you've had. It's actually perfectly normal. I probably would have did the same thing in his shoes, But what do you guys think, the listeners? Like, this is the first encounter I've gotten of a dogman with horns, which makes me think, like, what the hell was that? Like, because I think it was whatever the hell it was demonic. I don't think it was a normal dogman or werewolf, or not that dogman is normal, but you know what I mean? Compared to most encounters, yeah, dogman with horns, it's, I don't know. I mean, what are your guys' theories down in the comments below? Yeah, this is the first one I've received. Maybe I'll receive more if you have had an encounter with a dogman with horns, or maybe a dogman with an extra limb, or any type of other dogman that's outside the typical encounter. Don't be afraid to email me and share your encounter. Let me know. I would like to hear your encounter, no matter how weird it may seem. None of this is normal, or what we deem as normal. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.
Stalked by Bigfoot.
Miranda is an avid hiker, and one day she decides to go on a solo camping trip in the forest. Now, as Miranda was making her way through the woods, she started to hear strange noises coming from the bushes around her. Now, she doesn't know if it's multiple things making noise. It's a forest. There's noises all the time, but these noises were kind of distinct. And she didn't know if it was coming from one location and echoing, or if she was being surrounded by this noise. But alarmed, she slowly scanned the area. And that's when she suddenly saw a tall, hairy creature standing behind a tree. The hair was reddish brown, and it had a very human face, but it was taller than any human, about 9 feet tall. That's what she estimates. And it had this foul stench. It was like stronger than a skunk, but she couldn't quite place the stench. And it stared at her with a menacing look. Now, she had heard of Bigfoot before. Who hasn't heard of Bigfoot? This is probably the most popular creature, cryptid, whatever you want to call it. But she never imagined she would come face to face with one. Miranda was frozen in fear, and that's when the creature began to move towards her, its large feet crushing the dried leaves as it slowly took steps. Miranda, still paralyzed with fear, couldn't scream. The creature was getting closer and closer until it was only a few feet away. And that's when Miranda finally mustered up the courage to scream, and the creature immediately ran away into the thick brush. She never saw it again, but the memory of that terrifying encounter still haunts her dreams. She still is affected by what she saw. To this day, she doesn't tell anybody about it because, as popular as Bigfoot is to talk about, 99.9% of people, when you talk about it, are not going to believe you. And I asked her, has it affected, because she's an avid hiker, has it affected how she goes into nature? She said it has, but she refuses not to go into nature because of this encounter. Like, she's affected by it, but despite her fears, she tries to push through her fears and go into nature anyway, but she's more smart about it now. She said that if she's going to go into nature alone, she tries to go to a very public area, like near a beach or something, After that encounter, she said she packed up all her shit and she left. But when she was leaving, she didn't know if this thing truly ran away or if this thing was just kind of startled by her screaming, so it kind of went away but was still watching her. She didn't know, but she's just glad she made it safe. And seeing this thing was already scary enough, but the scariest part of her encounter was that she didn't know what this thing's intent was. As it was getting closer to her, she didn't know if it was going to kill her, if it was just going to beat her up a little bit, like rough her up, or was it just intimidating her? She didn't know. It's just, if she hadn't have screamed, what would have this thing have done? And she did comment that she's listened to other podcasts. She's looked on Facebook pages, and for some people, there's this narrative that Bigfoot is friendly as long as you don't bother it. And she just wants people to know she does not believe that at all. She believes Bigfoot is a creature like any other wild animal in the woods, that each encounter varies. And, she got lucky. She was one of the lucky ones, but she honestly feels like maybe not all Bigfoot, but there are some Bigfoot out there that are just super aggressive. And she's heard of ones where they are super aggressive, but they are definitely not cute, cuddly animals that, want to eat dinner with you and all this. No, she honestly felt, she doesn't know for sure, but she felt like this thing would have killed her if she did not muster up a scream loud enough to deter it away. But she's just more smarter about going into nature. She cautions people. She wanted me to caution people and going out, make sure you have a taser or something with you, because she didn't have that. She didn't have, a taser. She didn't have bear spray. She didn't have anything, not a gun, anything. And it's like you don't know helpless until you're in an encounter like that with no weapon whatsoever. But now she does. She carries a taser and bear spray with her. Now, whether how effective a taser and bear spray would be against a Bigfoot, she has no idea, but she hopes she never has to find out personally. She's never seen one again since her encounter, and she does not wish to see it again. And the one thought that keeps ringing and playing on a loop in her mind ever since this encounter, it's real. It's real. It's real. It's real. It's real. That's all ever since the encounter, she can keep saying to herself, like, this damn thing is real. And she wished more people knew about it, but what can you do? It messes up your life. It definitely messed with hers. She can't talk to anyone about it unless that person either believes these things exist or they too have seen it personally themselves. But yeah, she's trying to live without fear. She still loves nature. She's just more cautious of where she goes. And once again, let the theories fly in the comments, but be nice, no disrespect, no mean comments. If you disagree with somebody on something, just be like, I agree to disagree, but this is my opinion. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the support. Continue to send in those encounters. I don't get encounters like every single day. There are actually huge gaps in between when I get encounters, which is why sometimes it'll take a week or more for me to upload an episode, is because, well, I don't get encounters like that. I unfortunately don't have like a journal full of encounters I can just keep continuously reading from. So, hey, if you guys want more consistent episodes, encourage people to send in their encounters, So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the support, and I will catch you in the next episode.